Hi, I am Jerry Laird, and welcome to Carousel. That's the greeting that you have heard for the last 20 years for this show, Jerry being the host of Carousel. Unfortunately, Jerry can't be with us tonight because he has had a serious health malady, and that has laid him up considerably. He is getting better. He's convalescing. It's a very slow recovery time, but we are going to continue the mantra of the show of Carousel, meaning bringing in a wide variety of interview folks and talk about folks from different social organizations and business and musicians and artists and etc. That's what Jerry and our producer Joyce Fishman had started out with Carousel. My name is Scott Albertson. I've been a guest on Carousel frequently in the last 3 years by invitation of Jerry Laird, and I appreciate the fact that not only Jerry but also Joyce has recommended me to fill Jerry's seat. The first show we're going to do is a gentleman that I've had the pleasure to get to know in the last 4 months. If you have listened or seen live performances of music in the last 30, 40 years, you've probably heard this gentleman play as a pianist, and also he serves as a music director. If you have seen or heard folks such as major artists as Lena Horne or Chubby Checkers or John Denver or Johnny Mathis, you most likely heard this gentleman play. And chances are, as the song would say, he has an incredible history and wealth of experience in the music world, not only as a pianist but as a musical director. So we welcome to Carousel Mr. Frank Owens.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you for coming up, Frank.
I thought you were Jerry Laird.
No, no, not tonight. On many things, but not Jerry Laird tonight. So how I want to get into this is, first of all, I've gotten to know Frank not only as a friend, but also a fact that he and I have been performing lately as piano and vocal team, and we've got some upcoming performances. I'll mention real briefly, we're going to be back at Tommy Jazz in New York City on July 21st at 8 o'clock.
And that'll Saturday?
Yes, and that's a Saturday night. That's exactly right. And that'll be with Arthur Lipner, who's a local musician here in Fairfield County and vibraphonist. And matter of fact, Arthur has been on the show with Jerry. He's been interviewed. And we'll also be at the Triad on August 18th at 9:30, and that'll be just Frank and I, just piano vocal. And then also you're back at the Triad on September 22nd at 7 o'clock with Richard Williams, vocalist. Also, Frank performs every Friday at the Musician Union Hall, which is on West 48th Street between 8th and 9th in New York City, and that's from 6 to 9, 9:30. It's a singer's forum, which I've been to, and it's such a welcoming, nurturing environment. So, Mr. Frank Owens. Now, Frank, I had the pleasure of getting an invitation from Frank to go to a lecture that he did in New York City about 6 weeks ago at Hunter College. So I'm going to ask Frank to use his lecture as a basis of this interview tonight. So we're going to start from, I guess, your days at the Apollo.
I suppose so, yes. As a matter of fact, you may or may not have known that I was an amateur myself. I went on there to play pianist and as a pianist, and they didn't have very many people playing piano in those days. It was mostly singers. And I went on, and of course, Errol Garner being my idol, I played a selection in his style. And I thought, well, at the time, the musical Showboat was appearing on Broadway, so I said, well, I'll play Why Do I Love You? Well, actually, that was not my first selection. It was another selection that I did, Street of Dreams, I believe. And then I wanted everybody to know, I won first prize for 2 weeks. I wanted everyone to know that I knew another song. So I decided I would play Why Do I Love You from Showboat. Why do I love you? And of course, nobody ever heard of the song. Nobody ever heard of Showboat. And I got third prize. And I was a little disappointed, but you know, you live and learn. So then I would go down to the rehearsal hall, which was in the basement, and listen to the accompanist there, who was accompanying the amateurs. And he was playing wrong chords, and, oh, come on, no, that's not that. It's a B flat rather than this, blah, blah. That was a real bratty son of a gun. And he said, look, man, you can have this gig after a while. And sure enough, I got to be the amateur. I got the gig. And then Johnny Mathis came through, and I went on to be his musical director. But before that, in those years, the singers were, male singers, you know, thrived in those years. Billy Eckstein, Johnny Hartman, people of Arthur Prysock, and women singers didn't do as well. But one of the singers that came on was Barbara McNair. And Barbara McNair came on, and she was gorgeous, and of course I felt it was my first real love, I guess you could say. And unfortunately, she departed a few years ago, but we were together for quite a while. But anyway, I got to be with Johnny Mathis, and at the time, I auditioned for the musical director role, and I was auditioning also with Linton Garner, who happened to be Errol Garner's brother.
Oh, wow. And this was out in Vegas with Johnny, right?
Well, no, he hadn't
Johnny
gotten to Vegas
okay.
yet. We hadn't gone to Vegas yet.
Okay.
So we auditioned at NOLA Studios on 57th Street, and he chose me. But I think he chose me because I was more of his age. I would assume so. But I didn't know a thing about music. I didn't know how to give a downbeat. I didn't read all that well, you know, music and all that sort of stuff. So when we got to Vegas, he saw to it that I had conducting lessons. So I went to the gentleman who was the conductor of the Sands Orchestra was Antonio Morelli.
Okay.
And Johnny thought that I should have conducting lessons, and sure enough I did. And then from then on I got to learn how to arrange and be competent enough, because, you know, when you're a singer as great as Johnny, with the magnitude of Johnny Mathis, and you got some flimsy conductor around, you know. We were in Buffalo once, and one of the drummers said to me, man, when you want to make a cutoff, just make a fist, you know. And they were very helpful, you know, but you need to have somebody competent enough with you, you know.
Sure.
But anyway, Johnny Mathis was the first of many singers that I've worked with, and it's a diverse array of singers, as you may probably know. It was Johnny Mathis, Chubby Checker, John Denver, Johnny Nash, Petula Clark, of course, in later years, and Lena Horne, and Melba Moore, and a whole bunch of people. And I now work with Keith David on occasion, the actor, singer. So I've been very fortunate to have done that, you know, sort of thing. I guess my career started at the Apollo, and then, of course, my first foray into television was with David Letterman.
Right, that was in 1980?
1980, yeah.
Right.
Nobody knows that, of course, because he was on in the mornings, and his humor was a little bit too zany, I believe, for the morning. So it was 1980. We did about three months of David Letterman. He was on from 10 to 11:30. Then it was from 10 to 11. And we were replaced by Card Sharks, which was a game show hosted by Wink Martindale. I'm sure people know who that is.
I remember Wink Martindale.
Yeah, but I got paid for the rest of the year because I signed a contract with NBC till December, so I was in good shape.
You were happy.
Yes, I didn't get the $10 million that Ann Curry got, but, you know, but I did pretty well, so that was pretty good for me. And then my next television, I guess my next television important role was with Showtime at the Apollo. Okay. And that came on, and Joey Carbone was the musical director for Star Search out on the coast. Remember Star Search?
I do remember.
And he came in to sort of supervise and see how it was for me to be the musical director for Showtime at the Apollo. And in those years, we did a show a night, but then they realized that it would be much more economical to do 3 shows in a night, which is what we did. So that lasted for quite some time. So still trying to get residuals for the appearances on TV1. The union hasn't been forthcoming yet, but that's another story. So
now we don't have a piano here, but I wanted to mention this because we have the air piano. We have an air guitar. We have the air piano. But I wanted to mention because I thought it was an interesting side story, if you will, that you mentioned at the Hunter College class lecture, and you were talking about Tony Orlando and the tune, and how you came up with the basic chord structure, like the intro chords.
Yes,
that led to a whole bigger song.
That is, well, yeah. He got a television show because of me. I will be very modest and admit that. The chords were given to us: E flat, G minor, F minor 7, B flat 7, and I made something out of it by doing bum 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 ba-dee da dum. Bum, 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 yeah, based on those chords.
Sure.
And the producer, Hank Medras, said, quick, get a microphone over here. And in those years, the forerunner of the synthesizer was the farfisa. So it's an Italian instrument.
Okay.
And I played it on that instrument and also the clavinet. And it got to be a big hit.
Yeah.
And Tony Orlando, he used to be Dawn, but then once he got the hit record, it was Tony Orlando and Dawn. You know,
so. Yeah. Became the front man.
Yeah, there you go. You might
exactly.
say, yeah. So I've been on many records. You know, one of them also is Irene Cara in Fame. Out here on my own.
Okay.
That's me playing piano on that as well. Not to mention all the commercials that I've done, you know. The latest one, which is not on the air anymore, is Prestique.
Prestique.
Yes, which is, I can't remember how it goes, but I did 2 years of residuals for that. It was pretty good.
There was an interesting movie I've seen. I'm sure you're well versed on it. It was on Turner Classic Movies the other day. And in it, Lena Horne comes out and does 2 numbers in the middle of it. That must have been such a thrill to work with her because she was so beautiful.
Yes.
And certainly, not knowing her personally, but she seemed like she was so full of life.
Yes.
Because she was so energetic on the stage. She was so animated and really came out with a lot of gusto and just like, really put it out there.
Yeah, she was one of a kind, you know, and I was very fortunate. You know, little did I know I would dream to be musical director for Lena Horne and all the others as well. But Lena Horne, of course, and she was so majestic, and yet she did not like adulation. She didn't want you to rave about her singing, you know. And she said if she ever came back, she wanted to sing like Tina Turner or Aretha Franklin. Yeah, she was quite something.
Wow.
Special. Yeah. We really missed her, you know, and her birthday is coming up. June 30th would have been her birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so she died, I think, last year or year before. I think
Yeah, it's been fairly recent, yes.
Yes, so, but that was wonderful to be with her. And, you know, she had little isms or things that she would say. She'd say that every time she was asked to appear someplace, she had to have a different gown because she didn't want women to say, she wore that gown last time she was here, you know. So
Exactly.
She didn't want that to be said of her, you know. But
Right.
she lived on the east side, East 74th Street, and we would go to her apartment on occasion. And I would bring her glass flowers because glass flowers, of course, never die on her birthday.
Right.
You know.
Oh,
So,
that's so sweet.
yeah, yes.
But that's you.
Well,
That's
yeah,
Frank
okay,
Owens.
I guess
What
so.
I've gotten to know of Frank in a very short span of time is the fact that Frank is not only a gentleman, but he's also a gentleman. And he's also a very sweet soul. Real quick story from a personal perspective is when we did the Tommy Jazz gig on May 5th. And we got together, no rehearsing. We just met and we just laid it down. We did a bunch of tunes. We just aired it out. It was just piano vocal that night. And it was so much fun. And at the very end of the gig, at the end of the evening, we're standing at the bar, meaning Frank and I. I'm getting ready to pay him. And Frank said to me, I should pay you for tonight. You shouldn't pay me. Which spoke so much of who you are at that moment. You know, it's never a grand gesture. It's always the small items or the small actions or small words that make such a bigger effect. And I thought that was so sweet.
Oh.
But it was also the fact that we had so much fun. I said to you when you walked in, I said, a company does not exist tonight. It's you and I are going to come together and make music. And that's the growth as a musician and as a vocalist, being able to work with somebody like you when you just come straight out of a box, so to speak. It's like out of the gate, and you know the gate goes up and off and away you go, and there goes the rabbit.
Thank you.
And off and away you go, and it was such a joy. And then Frank does, we close the evening out with I'll Be Seeing You, old Sammy Fain tune, 1938 I think it is. And point is that we just called it out. He said, I'll Be Seeing You in E flat. He said, oh sure, fine. So he started playing, which is what it's written in. And so then you, at the end, or in the middle, I'm sorry, we did it through once, and then you were doing a whole solo piano, and it was absolutely stunning. And at the very end, he stopped when the song was over, and he says, I'm sorry I ran away with it. And it was what you did, what you played, was breathtaking.
Oh.
And what actually at that moment, because I was listening to it and I was feeling where you were, that I actually was inspired, and when we finished it out, I actually took it to another place just because of what you were playing, because I was listening. It was so beautiful,
Well,
it was so moving.
Thank you.
Interesting, want to take a left turn here because it's an interesting little side note, again, the fact that you were talking about Eric Garner being your idol, so to speak, or having so much reverence for him. How about, I heard a story that he could not read music.
That's true.
And he couldn't write music.
No, he could do neither. And when he was in Pittsburgh, he appeared on KDKA television, and the some kind of kids show, whatever. But he had no patience to learn music, to learn how to read. He played so well, and of course the story is, and it's quite true, he sat on a telephone book because he needed to raise his height from the piano stools. And, you know, he did well with the Manhattan telephone book. He would not have done well with Dubuque or someplace in Iowa. It would not have worked for him, you know.
Yeah.
But yes, he was terrific. And when I heard him play, I wanted to know, how did he do that?
Sure.
And that's how I learned to play like him. And of course, I've done concerts of his, which I guess we're going to show that a little bit later. But also the fact that Martha Glazer is his manager, or was anyway, and we were in touch with each other for a long time. I have not heard from her in a while, but she named lots of the tunes that he performed. You know, and I'll tell you about Misty. I think I may have mentioned about the song Misty. He was on an airplane going to Los Angeles, and
I was going to mention that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Right, and so he came up with this melody, but because he could not read music and he couldn't write it down, they had to rush him to a studio so he could perform it and play it and record it. And I think Johnny Green or Johnny Mercer wrote the lyric to it. But it's one of the most played songs in the world.
Absolutely. And I think it was he landed in L.A., right?
Yes.
He got off the plane, they got him in the car, and they rushed into the studio
Yes.
so he could get it down because he still had it in him.
Yes, exactly.
It was still fresh, so to speak.
Yep.
That's a wild story.
As a matter of fact, I was instrumental in a way of making sure they have a jazz wall at ASCAP, and I used to bug Marilyn. The vice president of Marilyn Bergman. I would bug her, said, please put Earl Garner on the Jazz Wall of Fame, which she did finally, So.
Well, also, you may or may not know this with all your recording experience in history, but from what I used to know, it was a couple years ago, we did my 4th CD. We recorded it at NOLA Studios on 57th Street, and his piano was in NOLA Studios.
Yes.
They got it when his estate closed. And I remember looking at the board where you flip up the board where it abuts the keys, and you can actually see, because he played so hard, you could actually see there was digs in the wood of the piano from him playing so hard, because he would do this.
Yes.
And it actually gouged the wood into the piano.
Yes, he would grunt as well,
Really?
Yes.
That's so wild. Yes. Those are those musician stories, I guess, if you will, that a lot of people don't hear about.
Of course.
It's just fascinating. It's really fascinating and very interesting. Okay, we do have the video clip. I want to get to that. Okay. And this is just set it up for us so we understand what it is, please.
The Borough of Manhattan Community College has a theater called the Tribeca Theater, and it's Tribeca. You know what the Tribeca comes from? For people who do not know, Tribeca is Triangle Below Canal. That's what it stands for.
Triangle Below Canal.
Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. The lower Manhattan is like a triangle.
Right.
And that area of Manhattan is called the Triangle Below Canal Street.
Tribeca.
So it's Tribeca.
Wow.
So I did this concert back in May of 2007, and I used Bob Cranshaw, bassist.
Bass player.
Yes, bass player, who works with Sonny Rollins a lot. And I also used Earl Williams on drums, who produced the Eddie Hayward album that I also recently, we did it about 12 years ago, but it's recently out. Frank Owens plays the music of Eddie Hayward. But my favorite jazz pianist, or among others, of course, I learned a lot from Earl Garner. And this concert, I pay tribute to Earl Garner.
Okay, so we're going to go to this clip, please. That was terrific footage. And you truly get some of the sense of the genius and the artistry of Frank Owens. And again, from a personal perspective, it's so wonderful to be able to perform with people such as of your caliber, because it's very simple. It takes a considerable period of time of getting there and talking about your experience, talking about meeting Johnny Mathis and how he sent you to that Italian fellow, and he gave you instruction on how to be a music director and an orchestra leader and all that. But it takes a period of time to get there, and it's nothing that can be rushed. But when you get to that place that you come together as how many other 2, 3, 4, how many other people you're working with, and you just simply make music. It's a beautiful experience every single time. It really is. It's never the same.
No, it isn't. No, every singer is different. As a matter of fact, if I don't want to digress, but with Johnny, since he had such faith in me and to make me a better person than I was, a better conductor, better musician, the Lena Horne album, we did an album and she did a duet. And it was suggested that we use Brian McKnight. I said, no, Johnny Mathis is the right. And Johnny used to say, I thought I was Lena Horne. He would say things like that. But anyway, I put him with Lena Horne. We put him with Lena, and he did a tune called Day Follows Day, written by Shirley Cowell and John and Abbott. I can't think of his name, but big Broadway producer. In any case, Johnny was so pleased, and he called me up. Frank, this is Johnny Mathis. And he was thrilled that I put him with Lena. We did that. You never hear about that particular tune, but it's on one of her albums, So it's a great story.
We wanted to mention a couple of your recent performances. So let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about where we're going to be, so we can kind of head towards the end here. I don't want to leave that out.
No, thank you for saying that. Yes, about 3-4 weeks ago, I was up in the Bronx, and we did a thing at Lehman College. Mercedes Ellington, with whom I collaborated, she had asked me to write an arrangement for 2 big bands, Bobby Sanabria Band and the Ellington Center Band, and combining Scheherazade, the Rimsky-Korsakov piece, with Caravan. And it was a monumental task, the score was that big, and you talk about the fact that I said I should give you some of the money back. Right. In this case, I should have charged her a fortune. I don't think enough of myself, I didn't charge her enough, and every night I go to bed, I think about it. I could have charged a lot more than I should have, I get so ridiculous about that, so I don't really know my worth sometimes, Right. But that was something recent. I also worked with Keith David, who's an actor, singer. He's coming up with a movie called The Bells, a television series called Bells. There's a movie that he recently did in Europe, and has to do with Tom Hanks, I think Halle Berry, and it's called Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas.
Yes, and he's out, and he's been after me to straighten out some arrangements that I did, and they need to be tweaked. And of course, I wait till the last minute to do everything, So he calls me. You can't reach him normally, but I can reach him now. He keeps calling me so he needs about
it's
this
Frank
weekend.
Owens. Okay, I'll take the call.
At the last minute, So that's what I've been doing recently, aside from the open mic, as you mentioned.
Right. So I want to just go over that again because it's important. If people want to come out and hear you, hear us. Hear just great music. All right, so you're at the open mic on the west side, West 48th Street, Musician Union
West
Hall.
48th Street. Anybody's welcome to come.
Exactly, and it really is a singer's forum, but it doesn't necessarily have to be singers because you welcome people who are tap dancers.
That is correct, yes.
And you're terrific at that because you've had a long experience of playing with Gregory Hines and so many other people of the tap ilk, so to speak. And so he's there every Friday, meaning Frank, from 6 to 9, 9:30, and it's very inexpensive. And then we're at Tommy Jazz on July 21st from 8 to 10:30.
West 53rd Street?
No, that's
East 53rd Street.
East 53rd Street, yes, right, between 2nd and 3rd. And that's going to be with local musician, meaning Fairfield County, Arthur Lipner on vibraphone, so it's a trio. And then we're back at the Triad, which is up on West 72nd Street. That'll be August 8th at 9:30. That'll be just Frank and I. And
August 18th, is it?
August 18th, yes. And that's a Saturday night. And so is July 21st. That's a Saturday night as well. And then you're at the Triad, back at the Triad on September 22nd, and that's with vocalist Richard Williams, and that's at 7 o'clock.
I like going to Saturday nights, things like that, because I get to I have a home in Washington, as you may or may not know, so I go down there as often as I possibly can, but I came up especially for this. And also you should mention that I'm going to be at Bryant Park.
Oh, right, the end of August. We didn't talk about that, sorry.
Yes, that's behind the public library, and it's a Piano in the Park series that they have every year, and every week there's a different pianist.
Be specific with the address, meaning like intersecting streets so people
Yes,
understand?
it's Bryant Park is behind the public library, the New York Public Library, which is on 5th Avenue between 42nd and 40th Streets, and it's behind there. And I do that every year, usually around my birthday. So it's the last week of August.
Okay, so you're going to be there last week of
Yes,
August. All right, we're going to end out the show here, and I knew that 28 minutes,
It certainly flew by.
not only did it fly by, but I knew it wouldn't be all the time that we could talk with you.
Yeah.
So I hope at some point in time you'll come back, and certainly we're going to have some more time together as performing. That's no question about that. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for coming, Frank.
You're
We
welcome,
really
Scott.
appreciate it. And what we're going to do is we're going to have something new beyond being a guest host here tonight. We're going to close out the show with some of Jerry's music. Now, Jerry Laird, if you know or do not know, has recorded approximately 6 or 7 CDs. And we're going to close out tonight's show with a very sweet thought of Jerry and share with you some of his music. Thank you for coming. We'll hopefully see you again soon. Be well and enjoy the summer.
I was sentimental, lost my head to the moon, but that's incidental to the change in my tune. Gonna put away my feelings, lay my life upon the shelf, for the only way to keep it is to keep it to myself. I'm gonna lock my heart and throw away the key. I'm gonna see all those tricks you played on me. I'm gonna turn my back on love, gonna snub that moon above, seal all my windows up with tin, so the love bug